British base in Akrotiri is national UK sovereign land, and that on its own reveals the extent to which colonialism is still alive and well in our days.
Hi everyone, I'm Mark Curtis, the co-director of Declassified UK, and I'm very pleased to welcome today to us Yanis Varoufakis, who, as I'm sure everyone will know, former Greek finance minister, been one of the leading voices around Europe calling for an end to the genocide in Gaza, Secretary General and founder of the DM25, the Democracy in Europe movement, and involved in many, many projects. Very, very pleased to have you with us today, Yanis. Thanks for coming.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate what Declassified does enormously.
Thank you, Yanis. Can I ask you first about the situation in Israel and Gaza? As you know, Declassified's been doing a lot of work on how Britain is supporting Israel. And as a former minister in Greece, in the Eastern Mediterranean, what's your view of Britain using its air bases on Cyprus to provide intelligence support for Israel during this genocide?
Well, it is full complicity with a genocide. The United Kingdom political establishment, and not just the government, has blood on its hands. But Mark, it's not just the UK political establishment. It is the whole of the European political establishment, maybe with the exception of Ireland, possibly of Spain. But I have to say, with enormous pain in my heart, that my country, Greece, our political establishment, quite remarkably, is also part of the same war crime, genocide. The blood that the British government has on its hands is shared with the Greek government. And I'm saying this with enormous pain. Let me explain this for our audience briefly. Because Greece used to be a staunch supporter of the Palestinians. And when I say Greece, I mean every single political government that we ever had, even right-wing ones. We were one of the very last countries to recognize Israel. Even right-wing governments wouldn't, not because of any animosity to the Jewish people, but because the argument was that unless there are two states side by side, as was the original United Nations understanding, then you can't recognize one without the other. And then this turnaround. At the time when Greece was going bankrupt, our governments here adopted a policy of compliance, a policy of surrendering, not only to the troika of the international financial institutions, but also to Zionism. It's remarkable how these things go together. Once you surrender in one realm, you surrender to the Zionist apartheid project in Palestine.
And can I ask you to imagine, if I may, you being a minister in the Cypriot government, because Britain has these spy bases on Cyprus as well as these air bases, and actually the intelligence bases that Britain has on Cyprus it is never publicly acknowledged. They're kind of secret, but it's a kind of an open secret. I mean, if you were a minister in the Cypriot government, wouldn't you be demanding that the UK come clean about exactly what kind of intelligence facilities it has on Cyprus? And why aren't Cypriot ministers doing anything about that, do you think?
There are two quite distinct answers to your question, and both are important. They are complementary one to another. The first one is because the Cypriot government is completely in the pockets of Israel, like the Greek government is, like the United Kingdom government is. And that on its own is self-explanatory. But there's a second answer, which is also crucially important. And the second answer is that the way that Cyprus was set up in 1960, I believe, as a result of the long and very painful and bloody war of independence by the people of Cyprus from the British Empire, from Britain. The British regime made sure that Cyprus would be a diminished entity from the very beginning. So they encouraged the Greeks and the Turks on Cyprus, the Greek Cypriots and the Turkish Cypriots, to clash with one another. This is a typical British Empire strategy of divide and rule. It's what they did with the Hindus and the Muslims in the Indian subcontinent, the result being civil war that that gave rise to India and Pakistan, and today we can see the repercussions of that in Kashmir as we speak. But something else that I think is crucial for answering your question is that the agreement on the basis of which the Cyprus Republic was set up made clear that the Akrotiri military base of the United Kingdom on the island of Cyprus is not sovereign Cypriot territory. It is not like in other countries where you've got American bases, you have British bases that lease the land from the nation state, and then they have to comply by certain rules as to how they use it. To put it succinctly and vulgarly, if you were the relevant minister in the Cypriot government, right, you wouldn't have the right to inquire as to what the British are doing with their base, because the British base in Akrotiri is national UK sovereign land. And that on its own reveals the extent to which colonialism is still alive and well in our days.
You think that the Britain's ongoing use of those air bases on Cyprus is basically a sign of an ongoing colonial situation?
Well, you don't have to take my word for it. Just look at the legal status of the Akrotiri base on Cyprus. It doesn't belong to Cyprus. It is as if it were in Surrey or in Essex. So, yes, the empire lives on in the same way that Gibraltar. It doesn't have anything to do with Spain. The military base of the British on Cyprus. Now, what is interesting is why were they allowed, even after the British lost all authority or capacity to project power, especially after Suez, because the Suez War was the end of Britain's capacity, the British Empire's capacity to maintain its empire-like hold on other people's land. The reason is that while the United States effectively clipped the wings of the British Empire everywhere, they didn't do so on Cyprus, because it was in the interests of the United States that the United Kingdom maintains sovereignty, legal sovereignty, over a part of Cyprus, because it was the Americans' way by which to ensure that part of Cyprus remained in NATO at a time when it was clear to the Americans that the Middle East would be a theater of war for them.
Let me ask you about arms exports, Yanis, to Israel. So we've revealed at Declassified that the UK government is continuing to send military equipment to Israel, whilst ministers have been claiming that, in effect, they've suspended military equipment to Israel. So ministers appear not to be telling the truth. What does that tell us about UK ministers? I mean, what does that tell us about how government works?
Well, firstly, let me congratulate you for bringing this out in the open, because these journalistic success stories are essential for preserving a glimmer of hope that the public can know what is being done on its behalf, supposedly in its own name, against its interests, against the interests of humanity, and therefore the interests of the people of Britain as well. What it says is that, firstly, our government ministers will lie, and lie, rather than do anything to impede the capacity of the Israeli apartheid state to continue the ethnic cleansing process, which at some point became a genocidal process. The second thing it shows is that they are stressed. When they lie, it means that they are in a corner. And when they are in a corner, they lie. And we expose them, you expose them, we expose them, in order to make them feel even more unsafe. Because the more safe they feel in the pursuit of misanthropic policies, the worse the state of affairs for the state of play for humanity. So we have to continue forcing them to lie and catching them out when they do.
And why is it, Yanis, do you think that certain European governments, particularly the UK, particularly Germany, but also some other governments, why are they so strongly supporting Israel, do you think? Why are they happy to kind of bury on the altar of support for Israel some fundamental principles like supporting human rights, supporting international law. What explains their extreme backing for Israel?
Let's start from the fact that the Western powers never believed in human rights. It was a facade, it was window dressing, it was brilliant for them when they used human rights narratives and legislation against their enemies. But an associated point is the historical legacy, Mark, because the Zionist project of treating Palestine as terra nullius, a land without people, for a people without a land. That's the official Zionist slogan, right? A land without people for a people without land. Well, that was not invented by the Zionists. This was invented by the British. And it was invented in Australia, where Captain Cook and his many men arrive in Australia. They look at this beautiful continent and they declare it terra nullius, a land without a people, which was the first act of genocide. Because when you have 6 million Aborigines, natives, and you call them non-people, that's the first step towards eradicating them. And then you claim the land as your own. So there is a very long tradition of Europeans declaring land that they wanted as terra nullius and then committing genocide and taking it over. So, when people say to me, this is unprecedented. No, it's not unprecedented. It's part of our European tradition. When it comes to the Jews. Now, we Europeans have been committing crimes against the Jewish people, for centuries. For centuries, we have hunted them down. We have, committed one pogrom after the next in almost every country. From Spain, the only place where the Jews were safe was the Ottoman Empire and the Arab lands. And let's not forget that, right? When Christendom was a very dangerous place for the Jews. So pogrom after pogrom reaches its apotheosis with the Holocaust, of course. And then something really very interesting happens. Well, it was already happening before with the Balfour Declaration and so on. Remember, the Balfour Declaration was passed by a cabinet almost unanimously. There was only one person, only one minister in that government who dissented, and he was the only Jew there. And the reason was because he considered Zionism to be anti-Semitism. It was an act of saying, look, we don't want the Jews here, let them go there. And, we will declare it terra nullius, so we will eradicate or begin the process of the eradication of the Palestinians, of the Arabs, and we will replace them with the Jews to get rid of them. This is another form of rabid anti-Jewishness of Europe. So there is this tradition, so suddenly, when you put it in that light, it's really not that strange that Europe is utterly complicit in the unfolding genocide.
Thanks very much, Yanis, for that fascinating insight into the UK's complicity in genocide and the role of the UK air bases on Cyprus. And to everyone, if you like this video and if you'd like us to see doing more of these kind of videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks very much for watching this one.